Brakes, the single most important system on your motorbike. Whether you own a BMW, a Honda or a Kawasaki, it doesn't really matter. It's still the single most important system on our motorbike. I am a fully trained, qualified motor vehicle technician. I've been working on motorbikes and cars for over 40 years. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I'm an expert and that I know everything, because I don't. But I do know what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to brakes. I had factory training from Lucas, the Girling brake manufacturer, and I do know what I'm talking about. If you want a bit more from your brakes, what do you do? Well, the next step really is replacing brake pads. Providing everything else is in order, the contamination issues taken care of, the brake discs are in good order, your fluids being changed regularly, the thing to do is to think about changing brake pads. Now, there are lots of different manufacturers of brake pads. I can't cover all of them, so I'm just going to stick with Brembo. Now, I'm going to stick with Brembo for one particular reason. I'm not supported by them, I'm not sponsored by them, so don't be thinking that I'm favouring Brembo for any particular reason other than what I'm going to explain. Brembo calipers are fitted to a lot of BMW bikes. So Brembo are the manufacturer of the caliper, and they also manufacture a whole range of brake pads. They also make the brake pads that are fitted in the bikes from new. Now, these compounds, these are an agreement between BMW and Brembo, and there are a lot of compromises because the pads have to work in a wide-ranging series of conditions all over the world in different temperature ranges. So there's a compromise with the original OEM BMW pad, but Brembo have some solutions. Now, also Hayes, because a lot of the bikes in the BMW range will either have Hayes calipers or Brembo calipers. Brembo actually own the company Hayes. I know. So, compounds. This is where it gets really interesting. You need to be very careful, and you need to be truthful and honest with yourself about the type of riding you do, because that has a huge influence on the type of pad that you choose. So Brembo in general, if we look at their range, and let us just take, for example, 1250 series, so the R, the RS, the RT and the GS and so on, you've got, I think there's 8 options in terms of pad compound for these bikes. So the 2 top compounds really shouldn't be used on the road. So there's the RC. This is a race pad and should only be used on the race track. The one underneath that, it used to be called the SC, and it's now been replaced by the SR. Now, this is a slightly less track focused brake pad. It's more of a performance orientated pad, and I myself have installed these in my multistrada. Coming down through the range, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of pad that you can fit for road use. So probably the most popular, and the one that I would probably recommend, and actually it's the pad I'm going to fit to my GS, is called the SA. Now, this is a performance increase over the standard BMW Brembo pad. It's going to give you good longevity, it's going to last quite a while, but it does need a little bit more heat in it to get it performing really well, which is kind of the type of riding I do. I tend to ride a little bit quicker than the average GS rider, and I tend to use the brakes a little bit harder than everybody else. So that's the type of pad that I will be fitting, which is the SA. Now, the one below that is the LA. Now, the LA really is a long distance brake pad. It'll still give you a performance improvement over the standard brake pad, but it doesn't need so much heat to get to its operating range, and it will give you a long distance brake pad. So if you're doing tens of thousands of kilometers or miles with your motorbike throughout the year, and you're getting through at least one set of tires, the LA pad is a really good pad to have. Down from that, there is a pad called the SP. Now, the SP, you mustn't make this mistake, the SP is a rear application brake pad only. It should only be used on the rear of the bike. So that's the SP. Don't make a mistake with that. It's only to be used on the rear of the bike. It's a slightly softer pad. It is a performance increase, again, over that standard BMW pad. It's got great longevity. It's not going to squeal and squeak, which is sometimes one of the effects you get from a harder brake pad. So it's the SP, and it's only for the rear. And then there's another pad, and I think they call it the CC, which is a carbon ceramic. It's really what you would call an organic pad. I think they're available for a range of the Brembo calipers, but they really shouldn't be fitted to these big heavy bikes. They're really for lighter weight bikes, things that are sub 200 kilos. So the CC pad is definitely not for the GS. The GS is too heavy, and especially the Adventure, so that's one to avoid. So we've covered 6 pads. So then as we work our way down through the range, there are another 3 pads. Now these are really off-road orientated pads. This is the SD, the SX, and the TT. Now I don't have any experience with these pads. These are really for the more experienced off-road user. So if you do take your bike off-road, in particular in the mud, in the wet, in the gravel, and particularly in the sand, then it would be a good idea to have a pad that was designed to cope with those very harsh conditions. And that's what those 3 pads do. So I think from memory, the starting point is the TT. That is not a performance orientated pad. That is for use in very severe conditions. And then the next one is the SD. This will give you a performance increase. You need to get some heat in those for them to work. You could probably tour on that pad if you're doing lots of off-road, gravel, mud, sand type of touring. Maybe you're going on a world tour. The SD might be a good pad. And then there's the SX, which is really, you could call it a supermoto pad. It's a pad that needs a lot of heat to get it working really well. If you're doing some serious competition work, which I doubt you're going to be doing with your GS, that's another pad that you can use. So in terms of off-road, you've got these 3 options. So I hope you've learned something from this, because I made the mistake of thinking that what the one down from the top of the racing pad would work on the road. And although it does when it gets really hot, which is the SC or the SR pad, if I'm honest, I made a mistake and I shouldn't have fitted them to my multistrada. And in fact, what I actually had to do was when I used to go on tour on the multistrada, I had to take those SR pads out, put the original ones back in, so that I could get good braking performance on tour. So you need to be careful what you choose. I think, in all honesty, out of the pads that Brembo have available, the choice would be between the LA and the SA for the front, and for the back of the bike it would be the SP. So I hope that helps. I'm going to be changing my pads out to the SA in the future, but I'm going to do that after I've changed the tyres. So